The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel back in studio. And we'll see if we get up to the sight, the sounds, the World of the College World Series. Planning on that Monday. We'll get to our starting five in just a bit. Sal, we see you first. Congrats on that. We'll do our starting five shout-outs here in a little bit. Numbers to get in on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240, 489-1240, 800-825-5865, or along the Hail Varsity Radio network. And find us and follow us on Twitter, of course, at HVarsity Radio for the radio account. And watch and comment on the StreamYard Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there. Podcasts, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play to catch up on the show if you like. Big shout out. Thank you, Elijah. Thank you, Will Wilson. Thank you, Jabba Chamberlain, yesterday for covering me. I was having a medical procedure done. To get to a certain age, that means colonoscopy time. And the long and short of it, you hear Husker great Kent Pavelka talk about it a lot. And he is right. Men, women, get checked. It's a good thing. Good thing I did. Happy I did. And all good on my end. Sorry for the nurses having to see that for an hour. But it is what it is.
I'm still rolling with calling it your day of leisure. That's what I'm going to call it.
That's how I'd spend it?
Yeah, that's what I was saying all day yesterday. Schmidt was taking a day of leisure for himself.
That's so good.
You spent half the day laying on your side. We don't have to talk about what's happening behind you.
No. One of the nurses, she's a big Red Sox fan, so we were talking Boston. We'll call him Dr. Babar, was great. So, and my wife, bless her heart, she's a nurse on her day off yesterday and today. She's playing nurse at home, taking care of me yesterday. Junior had his wisdom teeth out this morning. So he sounds like he's got about 7 pounds of chaw in each cheek like he's Lenny Dykstra. Called him this morning after his procedure, and it sounds like he had 4 bags of marbles in his mouth. So it's pretty hilarious.
I think that's all right, Tommy. I'm not sure how big of a soccer fan he is, but there's been good wall-to-wall sports action over the last couple of days. Unfortunately, no College World Series today or tomorrow, but not awful timing whenever you are going to be posted up probably in a recliner or in your bed with the ice packs on your face. Not an awful time to do it whenever you have wall-to-wall sports action. He
was doing the pineapple Red Bull cocktail, and we pray that's all that was in the glass. But he had done his research. His friend Liliana said, you do pineapple, it helps with the swelling and the pain. And school's not in session, so he's not selling off his Percocet. So I'm kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that ever.
They give him Percocet?
I don't know.
I said it seems a little extreme. My wisdom teeth experience wasn't too bad, to be fair.
Because of the family he comes from, he may have requested it. Not sure. But all that being said, we're doing okay. We'll check in with Brandon Vogel from Counter Read in about 15 minutes. So Vogue's a really good column today, The Unknowables, about the black shirts, and really fair question asked. Better, worse, or the same when it comes to the defense? We'll talk with Vogues about that in 15 minutes. We heard and got a chance to see Matt Rhule today. We'll hear from Coach Rhule here in just a little bit and throughout this first hour and part of hour two. Evan Bland from the Omaha World Herald, the Iron Man, covering your CWS and your Husker football. Evan with us in hour two. Coach Gary Barnett checks in. We'll focus in on the walk-ons a little bit further and just what the world of college football may look like. Some more expansion talk Barty may be keen to. And then Daddy Burke with us, burksbeat.com. Get you set for the NHL and some MLB bets that Daddy is scouting out. 489-1240, 1240. The other news of the day, Jalyn Gramstad was the pick at quarterback for the Big Red. Insurance, absolutely really good insurance for Nebraska. We'll explain and expand on that and more from Coach Rhule as well. So he shouted out Sal. Sal is in first with the starting five in the StreamYard. You want to be part of the starting five and beyond? Real easy. Just log on to YouTube, Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Can watch the show, comment, and line up to get in. Mike in says yeehaw. Jeff checks in. Jeff, good to have you. Weston, live from Blair, Nebraska. Weston, thank you. Jack is here. And starting five debut it is. Jack, well done. Patrick is in. The real Matthew is here. Crazy Spider Adventures. And is touting yesterday's show. Elijah was anything but Crazy Spider Adventures. Great stuff from Elijah.
Said Elijah was soft.
I was going to just kind of glide over that.
Well, it's better than Crew.
What would Crew say? Unbearable episode with Elijah at the helm yesterday.
Love you too, Crew.
Crew coming off the top rope with a steel chair in each hand. Jimmy is in. It appears to be a slow sports day. I don't think so. NASCAR Eric, good to have you. Shane, thanks for checking in. Craig is in. Thought I'd try to get in a little bit earlier, give you some South Texas perspective. Other Dave says you made it back. Good stuff. And I missed yesterday for a doctor's appointment as well. Well done, sir. Montana Husker fan, good to have you in. Patrick is here. Scott is in. Vince has checked in. And we'll get to more of the shout-outs. Cliff, good to have you. Cliff in as well, back in Florida. Cliff back in from Florida. So let's dive into the quarterback discussion here with Jalyn Gramstad. And really cool when you have your former head coach, Matt McCarthy, weigh in, a statement put out by Northwest. And on one hand, you're losing your two-time NAIA Player of the Year. You're losing a guy that balled for you first at safety, could tackle, could intercept, and then he went over to the offensive side and killed it, couple of championships. And you have this last year of eligibility for Gramstad, and he wants to give it a shot at a higher level. Well, totally respect that, but also wants to kind of kickstart his coaching career.
And let's lay one thing out first off. Last year of eligibility, but you could easily turn it into two, should you so choose, with the red shirt. Because it's, from what we understand, like from the outside looking in, a break in case of emergency quarterback, where even if you have to go off the bench for a series, you might be going to Harburg or to Kalen first, but
depending on your situation.
But it's a break in case of emergency quarterback, in my opinion. And this is also the first we're hearing about a potential coaching career coming afterwards for Gramstad, which makes sense. Matt Rhule's a good guy to have in your corner for a potential coaching career. And you look at it, there was the guy at Iowa State a couple of years ago that wrapped up his college football career and then came back and was a coach while also being a backup quarterback for Iowa State. His name escapes me right now. I could hit up the old Google machine and probably find it pretty quickly. But he had actually graduated, was done with college, did technically have 1 year of eligibility remaining, but said, no, I'm done. It was the COVID year. And said, no, I'm done. I'm going to go off and join a coaching staff. And that coaching staff that he joined was Iowa State, and Iowa State had a couple of quarterback injuries. And they said, hey, you got 1 year of eligibility left.
Put that eye black on, hustle on out there, don't fumble the ball.
Yeah, so by his final season, he was an assistant quarterbacks coach while also playing in the quarterbacks room. Could be something Gramstad wants to do as he gets some tutelage, tries to kickstart his coaching career. Again, Matt Rhule's a good guy to have in your corner, but you could potentially have 2 years with him if you use the red shirt with him this upcoming year, because he's used the COVID year, but he has not yet used a red shirt year.
Here's what you want in your program, and you recruit it. You'll find it in the portal. You want winning players. Winning players that won in high school. You want guys that won in college. And you want guys that are competitors. You have Gramstad that checks all three of those boxes. Real easy for him to sit and just keep on balling where he's at. No, he's going to put his chips in, come to Lincoln, understanding what he's against, and he's not blinking. I'm not making him out to be Tom Brady, but I that's the easy call is to stay and go try and win a third championship. The easy calls to just kind of kick back and be the man and, all right, I thrived at this level, but there's a little voice in your head as a competitor that says, man, I wonder if I could do it at a higher level. I want to challenge myself.
Well, it's like the easy comparison to make is Adrian Martinez. Like, you're a UFL championship winning quarterback, but you want that next shot at the NFL. You want to use that in order to get yourself maybe just a practice squad gig. Maybe you sign a contract as a backup quarterback. Like, you could be winning championships in the UFL, and he could always go back there next year, so it's not the perfect comparison, but you always want to challenge yourself as a competitor and see how you can cut it among the best of the best, and that's the opportunity that Gramstad gets. And at the end of the day, worst case scenario, you're playing for the school that you dreamed of playing for whenever you were a little kid.
Of growing up.
You get to be a part of that program. You get to be a depth piece, and if your number gets called, you get a chance to go out and prove it.
Well, what's cool too is, I mean, this is a guy who wants to be here and understands the quarterback room. And you want to be able to use Harburg in different capacities, presumably, but not veer so far off that he's not a quarterback option, because the kid's put in a hell of a lot of work, and you're going to see a good Harburg if called upon. You're going to see the next potential phenom in Dylan Raiola that has all the tools and talent in the world. And you're also going to see a guy in Danny Kalin that is going to give her hell, go try and win a job, and then get tutored. I mean, he's going to get tutored, he's going to get watered, and you'll see Danny Kalin in Lincoln at some point, sooner or later, be a guy that can sling the football and go win you football games. Now, what we've heard is there was some internal back and forth with the staff on what quarterback that they wanted, because you had two guys, and our old friend Mitch Sherman was at that graduate camp, talked to us about it a couple weeks ago, or was it a week ago, with Gramstad and Conover. Conover's is the talent from JUCO that's not a bad call either, but if you're Conover's, you're a guy that is only 20, and you're looking for a spot to go land and go compete for a job. That's available in Lincoln too, for sure. He wouldn't have come up to the camp without that opportunity. But this is one of those unique situations that Rhule talks about with why you'd take a one-year guy, right? Because is it break in case of emergency? Is it a situation that's insurance? Is it a guy that can come in and whatever this scenario or situation is, as a backup that's thrust to a starting job? Could you get and this is way, way, way beyond. I hate to draw this comparison, but it's what comes to my mind. Do you have a guy that's good enough to go win you a ball game with the help of your teammates, like a Matt Turman against K-State? There's no business that most teams have to go win on the road against number 12 in the country with your third-team quarterback and a one-armed Lawrence Phillips. But Nebraska did it. Brooke Behringer, look at his relief work, well documented in '94. So you need a guy that is capable, but you need a guy from a mentality standpoint that understands that this is really all about him, and he wants to be in Lincoln. That's first and foremost what it is, and that's the right fit if you take a one-year guy.
I mean, it's kind of the stuff that dreams are made of, though. I know he's coming to be a depth piece, but it's still like the guys. It
says a lot about him.
I mean, I know a lot of guys that I played with back in the day that went off and played NAIA football, and the dream was always, man, you wish you would have gotten that walk-on opportunity at Nebraska, or that
something
chance.
Bigger.
Someone looked at you, man, I wish Iowa State would have given me an opportunity. There's always that thought in the back of your head, but you know what? You love football. You're going to go off and play NAIA football, go show out and see what happens. It's the dream. Like, if you would have told Gramstad 4 years ago that the coaches at Nebraska wanted him as a depth piece, I'm sure he would have loved that. Like, it's a dream to go live out, to go see what you're made of, to go give it a go at a Power 5 Big Ten school. I think it's an awesome story. You're just, at the end of the day, happy for Gramstad that he found an opportunity such as this. Doesn't strike me as a guy that's going to be unhappy as a backup quarterback that's going to go live every single day to the fullest because he got that opportunity to go play D1 football, which not many guys do.
Well, he knew coming in what this was.
Well, he got the best of both worlds, too. He got starting experience, 4 years playing at Northwestern, a national championship and a national runner-up. you did all you could in NAIA ball. Go see what you can do at a Division I level. Just go get that opportunity. You can, worst case scenario, you can tell your kids or your grandkids someday, you got to play for Nebraska. You got to play behind Dylan Raiola. Like, yeah, you get a chance to go compete, but what an awesome story this is.
Well, and we're out to Coach McCarthy for tomorrow. We'll see if that happens. The real Matthew bringing this full circle when we talk colonoscopy to start the show. My missed day yesterday. And Matthew says, I have a colonoscopy story that involves Nebraska football. I don't know if he's referencing a loss or a season or what, but Matthew, if you care to share, you give her hell. Go right ahead.
Dublin felt like a colonoscopy for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and not just the game. Some of us came back with COVID. Some of us came back wanting that pure, glorious Guinness from Ireland. You still dream of having it again. But we'll hear from Matt Rhule, more from Coach. Coming up in about 20 minutes, more about the summer camps, roster size, wide receiver room, the corners, and what is down the pike. Maybe 17 or 18 games in a season. Brandon Vogel on deck with Counter Reed. Good to be with you on a Thursday. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel can find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio. At Herbal Essence for Elijah at HVarsity Radio for the show. Brandon Vogel from Counter Reed, counterreed.com. And follow Vogues on Twitter at Brandon L. Vogel from his football office. If you're streaming us on YouTube, you can watch the interview. And Vogues, good to have you. Another solid column today, Big Cat. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you guys?
We're good, man. We've got a little Rhule content to get to that's always appreciated in the 20th day of June. Kickoff countdown commences. You've got Phil Steele and crew laying out what they think of this black shirt defense. And let's start there because you focused in on the defense. And I love how you started off with some uncertainties here, what should be with this Nebraska football team, a potential future star, and that's a Topps 87 baseball reference, right? The old future stars. And then you have that bet that you hope comes through if you're a Nebraska fan. You've got an experienced offensive line, but what you do have to feel good about, Phil Steele sure does, Nebraska's defense. And is it going to be difficult, in your opinion, for them to replicate last year, or do you expect them to exceed last year? They were top 15 good a year ago.
Yeah, they were. That's kind of what today's newsletter at Counter Reed explores, and it's I think it's an interesting discussion because top 15 SP plus by defensive ranking had them at number 6 in the country last year, so there's not a ton of room to go up. But it's kind of the piece of the offseason, and rightly so. Like, we look at the offense and know that side's got to get way better. It's just kind of the piece that you set off to the side and say, well, like, yeah, you don't need to worry about that. They got a good amount of starters back, a good amount of returning production back. So what I did for today's story was kind of look at, like, hey, here's probably what it would have to look like to get better. Here's what it maybe looks like to stay the same, and here's what it might mean if it, they take a slight step back. Like, I think this is a very high floor group. I would be shocked if defense just fell off a cliff after we assume all off season long that it's the strength of the team. So there's not a ton of room to go up. How hard is it to maintain, I guess, is kind of the part I focus on. And I think the schedule from an offensive standpoint, just with the loss of the West Division and the addition of the 4 Pac-12 teams, even though Nebraska only plays 2, says, yeah, it is a little bit. You're going to face, USC, a team that under Lincoln Riley traditionally averages 40 points plus a game. We'll see if they can do that in the Big Ten. UCLA, a little bit of a wild card. The other piece of this is that I looked at briefly in the story is I think the quality of quarterbacks has gone up. on the schedule compared to what Nebraska faced a year ago. So there's some things here, and it's a defense that you feel really, really good about justifiably, but it does have some questions.
Brandon, it's been a while since we've dove into the nuts and bolts of the 4-2-5. This is a big discussion point on the show last year whenever people are doubting whether or not that's going to work in the Big Ten. I think after a year, Husker fans have come around to the 4-2-5. They see the benefits. Do you think that there's an added benefit to running the 4-2-5 when you look at how the Big Ten is going to look offensively in 2024 with the multiple different types of offenses you get? You're going to have high-flying, air-it-out USC. You're going to have ground-and-pound Michigan. You're going to have what's probably going to be a pretty balanced Ohio State offense, maybe erring on the side of passing. But you really have the full gamut of offenses in the Big Ten that you're going to have to defend against. Do you think the 4-2-5 is more uniquely prepared to be able to stop multiple kinds of offenses than other types of defenses, or am I reading into it a little too far?
No, I don't think you're reading into it too far. I mean, I think that's kind of what it's designed to do. It's designed to be flexible, and it's kind of a response to a lot of modern offenses. And I would say that, kind of the off-season concern of a year ago, where it's like, is that beefy enough to hold up in the Big Ten? Well, the Big Ten got a little bit less beefy with 4 teams from the Pac-12. So, and the big piece of it is Nebraska was really, really good against the run last year. So, and that's been the case for most of Tony White's career. Like, if you look at it as like rush defense and pass defense is kind of the 2 pillars here. Traditionally, his defenses as a coordinator at UCLA, Syracuse, and Nebraska now have been a little bit better against the run than they have against the pass. So I think really the key question becomes, do they improve a little bit against the pass? They weren't bad there a year ago, not at all. But I think that's kind of the next level for this defense potentially is getting a little bit better when teams throw the football.
And Anonymous chimes in. He says 3-3-5. I intentionally used 4-2-5 actually because you look at how that defense actually runs in practice last year especially. The variance is really whether or not the guy on the outside has a hand in the dirt or not. But it runs in practice, at least how it's been run last season with the personnel they had closer to a 4-2-5 than a 3-3-5. And the name is really the only thing that matters. It's pretty much the same defense. I think in practice what you saw last year was more of a 4-2-5, but the difference is semantics. It's not really all that much.
You needed that hybrid dude, and you've got a couple of them in Singleton and Giff that are able to cover, to stop the run, and do their thing when it comes to coverage and getting after the ball carrier. One area that I think Nebraska can be better at, and there's been a lot of talk about James Williams. You've got a slew of talent back, additional pass rushers, year 2 guys. To me, Vogues, and I want your thoughts, that's where Nebraska can help out maybe a talented but a young secondary, specifically whoever ends up opposite Tommy Hill or whoever's backing up Tommy Hill, right? Can that pass rush be better? It has to be, but what's that look like?
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, you've got depth. You started mentioning some of the kind of the second line players. A guy like Elijah Judy, et cetera. But what you got as kind of your core 3, 4, 3.5, whatever we want to settle on, you got 2 super experienced players and NFL potential players in Hutbacher and Robinson. You've got a couple of young potential stars, I think, in Linhart and Umanyulan. So that's, and it's not, Nebraska was pretty good at getting pressure. It sends me back to something, and I forget when it was in spring football, that Rhule said during spring football, the key is getting pressure without having to send pressure. Can you do it with 4 defensive linemen? And that's like a luxury, for teams that can do it. Boy, it sure allows you to improve against the pass quickly. And I do think the pass rush will be improved. I think the D line is the strength of this team on both sides of the ball, based on, what we can reasonably project right now. So We'll see. I mean, that's kind of the key to helping in the secondary. You know, I wrote a little bit about kind of the makeup of the secondary. Got 3 people that I think you kind of just lock in Gifford, Singleton, and Tommy Hill, who in the games he played cornerback was really good a year ago. The other 2 spots are kind of up for grabs. Malcolm Hartzog probably fits in there somewhere, but he was moving around during the spring. And Bly Hill, maybe their number 1 cornerback or their number 2 quarterback going into the spring game, obviously got injured in the spring game. So we'll see what his status ends up being. But yeah, if that front can just consistently harass quarterbacks, it makes things a lot easier for a group on the back end that is probably the biggest question mark when you look at defense. And that's even, you know, with losing 2 like really good, really respected linebackers.
On 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9, those were the backbreakers once a game in these 3-point or 7-point losses. It was 1 drive. It was 1 3rd and 8. It was 1 missed tackle, or we're nitpicking because they were so good for, it felt like 58 minutes. And they carried that football team. Rhule touched on the offense and where, you know, they struggled, and it was a kind of a one-sided, one-faceted team last year, with special teams not being a second phase that could win you games. They weren't to that point yet, and then the offense was the offense, right? But it was the back end, not the pass rush, that got touched up a little bit in some of those games, and that's interesting to see where they can go when that schedule is what it is with the quarterbacks, that you're going to see better quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, 64% completion percentage on 3rd and 7 or longer. Like, I mean, that's when the defense, you know, has every reason to believe an offense is going to pass. So that stands out. And it's hard to, like, you got to comb pretty deep and get pretty specific. Like, okay, let's look at 3rd and 7 and longer to find a lot of kind of like average to below average areas for that Nebraska defense a year ago. But that was definitely one of them. I think it was certainly the biggest one. And, you know, and that's kind of a 2-pronged approach. Like a little bit of a better pass rush helps there, but you got to be able to cover guys too. And specifically, like Rhule said, you got to be able to cover man to man when it comes down to it.
Brandon, before we get you out of here, I want to switch gears and discuss the topic we opened this show with. Jalyn Gramstad officially going to be in the boat this year, likely as a backup quarterback. Is that truly important in your eyes? Is that summer conversation, I guess summer fodder for the radio shows? What's the importance of Jalyn Gramstad?
I think it's truly important. If I were Matt Rhule, I wouldn't have wanted to go into a season with 3 scholarship quarterbacks, particularly the way they were grouped with 2 true freshmen. But you made it to the end of spring football, and it was kind of like drawn to an inside straight. You know, who you're going to get from the portal who wants to come and be kind of an insurance policy, for lack of a better term. But in Nebraska, credit to it, held a camp, found a guy. The opportunities matched up both ways. And what's the importance of this? Like, the first thing I thought of with this was Illinois, Luke Altmaier. He was the transfer from Ole Miss. He was going to be their starter. They also brought in a guy, John Paddock, who's Ball State's starter the previous year. And he went to Illinois because his great-grandfather, his grandfather, his uncle all played there. And Altmaier goes down, a guy who's played a lot of football, comes in, leads a game-winning drive against Minnesota, wins the next week by the 3-point game against Indiana. And he kind of got, you know, I don't know, I've never spoken to him, but kind of got to live out the dream of being at Illinois and being an important part of that program for those games.
Folks, hang tight. Got 2 minutes on the other side, okay?
Sounds good.
There he is, Brandon Vogel, counterread.com, talking Nebraska's new edition and those black shirts. Hail Varsity continues.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time with Brandon Vogel, counterread.com. Vogues, we talked about the addition of Gramstad. We've touched on the defense, better, worse, or the same. If Nebraska's going to add another piece, and we'll hear from Matt Rhule in just a moment, he was not bashful, and I wasn't saying he was asking, but he's not shy at all about adding guys that can help. Is another name or position addition, in your opinion, going to be that corner/secondary spot? Is that another piece along with that insurance policy quarterback?
I mean, if one fell off a tree, and you had some experience there. I mean, even something like we saw with Gramstad, where maybe there's an experienced player from a lower level who's kind of outside of the normal NCAA transfer portal channel. Yeah, I mean, maybe you could look at that. I'd be a little bit surprised. At this point, we're pretty deep into June, so. And the roster has a lot of defensive backs. I mean, this is the other piece with, I called it probably the biggest question with the defense for me earlier. That said, they brought in a ton of defensive backs. They've moved some guys from offense to defensive back. And when you think back to a year ago with this defense, what could you say concretely about Omar Brown or even Deshaun Singleton? And now you look at Deshaun Singleton and be like, yeah, he's one of your safeties, set it and forget it. And Omar Brown, played well enough to be a full-time starter and take his shot at the NFL. So it's a feather in the cap of this staff after just one season for the ability that they had to develop those guys. And you could look elsewhere too. Jamari Butler would be another example of somebody who, at this point last year, you were just like, well, yeah, he's been on the roster for a while, and that was kind of about it, almost as much as you could say.
Vogues, what's coming up with Counter Reed? What are you and Aaron Sorensen working on, bud?
Yeah, coming up early next week, we kind of moving into Olympic time, and there's some interesting connections there with the Huskers and the forthcoming Olympics. So I think Aaron's going to dive into that next week. I'll continue working through some of the unknowables, as I've taken to calling it, like it's a TV show or something. Just looking at some of these assumptions that you have to make and what they mean for Nebraska to be a team that continues to have a bullish offseason.
And Brandon, off-topic question of the day. I see the Jabulani behind you on your wall of books. Who are you rooting for in the Euros?
Germany, always Germany. Okay. Off to a strong start.
The only time to root for Germany.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's just like, yeah.
We had this conversation yesterday. I hate to reset. I don't know whether I should root for Germany or not because my ancestors, I got a lot of German in my blood. But my ancestors left Germany for a reason.
Same with mine.
So, if you're leaving, should I really be rooting for the Germans after my family was, I shouldn't say forced to leave the country because I don't know the history, but they left for a reason. Yeah,
the Schmidts settled in Madison, Nebraska, and it's all good. So, away we go. Vogues, appreciate you much. We'll holler Saturday morning, all right?
Sounds good, guys.
Appreciate you. There he is, Brandon Vogel with us from Counter Reed. We'll spend time with Evan Bland in about 20 minutes. Gary Barnett also. Let's hear from Matt Rhule and stick with that roster addition. Cut 5 here, guys that can help. Matt Rhule talked about it today.
To be honest with you, I don't think we're really looking for people. I think the one thing that we try really hard to do is we want to try to outwork the work. And so, if we throw camps and people show up, we're not going to look away from those things. And so, we're at a time now where there is no roster limit. There's a Title IX roster limit, but there is no roster limit. So if we can add players who can help us, then so be it. It's not like we're sitting out there saying, hey, go find this, go find that. I think my thinking about the portal, it continues to evolve daily. I think the one thing, if I could summarize it, it's I don't necessarily want to utilize the portal to get rid of players. A lot of coaches are culling their roster through the portal. I don't want to, if a player comes to play for me, I don't want to tell him he has to leave. Sometimes if a player wants to play, he might have to leave, but I'm not telling him he has to leave. But I will look in the portal, I'll look at other places. And so if someone's available and they can help us, we're going to do our best and do our due diligence. And, it'll create a lot of competition here. And I think the one thing I see that this group is such a great group and that they love competition. So we'll be recruiting all the way up until probably July 31st for this year's class. And there's a couple kids on campus that have popped up. Kids on campus have come to the portal camps. And they've reached out to us. And, there's a guy that's working out with us right now that's, that was just a student last year. So we'll look at all places to find players.
So that's a great outlook. We'll hear a little bit earlier from Coach Rhule here when it comes to the summer camps. He talked about just the importance of it, not only getting the youngins in to experience that Nebraska brand, but also just what this staff is and what they excel at, and that is evaluation. We'll get to cut to in a minute, but just one thing that Rhule underlined today was it's not just going diamonds in the rough. He made a clear point, and I'm glad he said it. It's not taking a flyer. No, they're just that good. When we talk about James Williams, and we're not crowning him as the next Trev or Grant, but he had a nice kind of wow welcome to the Big Ten, right? I mean, he's a guy that they found, they liked, and they got better. And James got better, and he made an impact just in limited time, made big impacts. They are all about that when it comes to looking at everybody across a roster. And here is Rhule about that evaluation.
You kind of say, I don't want to insinuate that Matt Rhule listens to this radio show, but I did kind of say something along those lines a couple weeks ago when we had Tim Verghese on, where it's like, what's the plan in summer? And he was talking about looking at 2026 and 2027. And I asked, is that kind of the way forward in terms of diamonds in the rough? And that, yeah, you still want to find the guys that other people aren't looking at, but you're looking a little further out in the future. So you're finding the guys that are future 4 and 5 stars when they're still freshmen and sophomores in high school and they don't have many F&E offers. Is that kind of the way things go? So I don't want to say that Matt Rhule listens to this show, but I did kind of make this point a couple weeks ago.
And the next thing you know, there's 70 offers.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, if they're good enough for Nebraska, they must be good football players. So let's offer right after Nebraska, but here's Rhule from earlier.
In terms of recruiting, I like to see players live. I like to see their competitive nature. I like to see their mindset. I like to see their skill set. So the fact that more and more people are coming each year to the camp, I can tell you this, we take the camp unbelievably seriously. I think if you ask Susan back there, like running that camp is there's a lot of pressure on the person who's in charge of it. The camp meetings at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning are as intense as the post-game meeting after we play our first game. Because, how you do anything is how you do everything. And if I want people to trust their son with us someday, there has to be an intentionality behind it.
So, Rhule, point blank, absolutely. There's always a reason for everything. We'll get a little bit more from Coach Rhule before we end this first hour. Real Matthew quickly chimed in with his colonoscopy Nebraska football story and just said, look, sometimes under heavy sedation you have vivid dreams. 2 years ago I had a dream where I was having a chat with Frost and Pelini. More with this from Matthew. I said to Coach Frost, I love you, but you're fired, and I'm going to go back and bring Bo back. I was just blacked out. I looked at the clock, and then it was waking up in the hospital bed. Didn't have any vivid dreams. Hail Varsity continues. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, winding down Hour 1. Miss any part of Hour 1 or the show, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast. Like and subscribe. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Tiger Shark Diver is in. Believe yesterday, Tiger Shark said that I was on a yacht in the Caribbean. Yep, I'm back from Barbados. Jimmy says his colonoscopy doctor was named Dr. Heine, and he wasn't joking. Tiger Shark is also cheering hard for Tennessee to win the CWS. Texas Oil and M is going down. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. Prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So some more from Rhule from earlier today. We'll get caught up with some more of Coach next hour. Evan Bland in 10 minutes. Coach Barnett checks in as well. Do we have time for the offense. Let's squeeze that in. And what Rhule saw from his offensive coaches cut 8.
Sometimes when you have a bad year, the first year, the head coaches usually fire the people that their areas struggle. Like our offense struggled. Like no big headline there. But I look at those guys sometimes. I'm in those rooms with the coaches. I'm in the room with Sat and with Garrett, and I'm watching like them triage through the year, and I'm like, what an unbelievable job they're doing. The results don't say that, but that's why you have to have guts to have this job and like to have this position. I could have started over, but instead, I saw the development of Malachi last year, and I saw the development of Jaden, and I saw the development of Jalen Lloyd. So everyone now is watching the spring game like, well, look at Jalen Lloyd. That didn't happen this spring. That happened last year. Okay, that happened because of his mother and father's trust in us to play him after the bye week. Because of Jalen's trust, because of the job that Sat did, all the people I just talked about, the Gus Felders and the small conversations, and you do your best work in the first year. You do your best work in losing seasons. The losing seasons bring everyone together so you can have more success moving forward. So I'm expecting that group to be really good. If we want to be good, we're going to be able to run the ball, but we're not going to be able to run the ball into some of the boxes we saw last year, and we couldn't last year when we had to run it without running a quarterback. And so we'll be able to run the quarterback, but we don't want to live on that. We want to be able to line up and run the ball versus 2 high safety looks. And if you try to play 1 high or you try to zone pressure us, we're going to absolutely murder you. And you need players to do that.
In short, he said, yeah, the offense will be balanced and be able to throw the football next fall. You want to put 9 in the box? Go for it, cowboy. We're gonna murder you. We need to clip.
Yeah,
that.
that's gonna be an intro somewhere.
We need to clip that. We need to absolutely clip that. That was the second part of the entire answer. Sammy McEwen asked him about the wide receiver group. What have you seen from the wide receiver group? We'll try and squeeze the first part of that in next hour, but it's pretty good. Stephen says,
we're going to absolutely murder you.
There we go. Stephen says, Chris is back. I won't pick on Elijah today. Did you take heat yesterday?
People was saying I was like a downer. I was being a hater.
Really?
I don't know why.
Oh, I didn't catch much of it. I caught Dr. Petey checking in the 5 o'clock.
Little boomer bust. We were talking injuries. Can the wheels fall off? Along with Phil Steele.
Sure. No, you were just presenting the other side of the coin.
I can take it.
Yeah, you're fine. Okay. No one gave you any trouble about the mustache, did they?
That's every day. I'm used to it.
Okay. Hour 2 is on the way.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you. It's Hour 2 at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in with the Omaha World Herald. It's Evan Bland at Evan Bland OWH on Twitter, where you can find him, omaha.com, where you read him. Evan, how we doing? Thanks for the time.
Hey, doing all right. How are you guys doing today?
We are good. We're back in studio. No CWS for us in Omaha today. You were pulling Ironman duty, covering the CWS. You've also had your eyes and ears on Big Red football, and going to start with Jalyn Gramstad. And really just kind of a perfect match, don't you think, with what he wants and maybe what Nebraska needed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's quite the story, really. I mean, you think about all the quarterback talk that has gone on from the spring on when you say, okay, they have 3 scholarship quarterbacks. You'd love to have a 4th, but who do you get maybe out of the portal or wherever, where there's that blend of experience but also understanding the situation in Nebraska, where you have a 5-star freshman who's trending toward being the guy. And Gramstad, I mean, talk about someone who threads that needle in a way that almost nobody else does, where he had great success at the NAIA level. He wanted to give major college football a try. He was a Nebraska fan, and so he gets to live out his dream. Nebraska gets a chance to add depth to that quarterback room, and it'll be really interesting to see what kind of impact he can make coming in this summer, having not gone through the spring, he'll be fresh to the playbook, but he's a veteran who has studied the game, plenty in his career. So I think all that is beneficial, and maybe the biggest beneficiary could be Heinrich Haarberg. When you talk about allowing him to maybe be more flexible in what his role could be at Nebraska, no longer is it maybe a situation now where Haarberg's your number 2 and you need to keep him on the sideline just in case. Now you have Gramstad as that potential backup or another safety net, and you can be a little bit more creative with Haarberg in different roles, as we've seen him be put in those roles last year under Matt Rhule and Marcus Satterfield. So I think it's just another example of Nebraska reaping the rewards of doing its due diligence, having this postgraduate camp where they were able to identify him. Sometimes these things, you could point to it and say that this was a lucky break, but it was also one of those things where Nebraska kind of made its own luck by having this event. They went out, they did the work, they scouted it, and now they had the depth for this season that maybe it looked like that wasn't going to happen as recently as a few weeks ago.
And Evan, from Gramstad's perspective, we're learning today he's got future aspirations to be a football coach. Not many better people to have in your corner than Matt Rhule. That's what we've learned through Matt Rhule stops at Temple and Baylor and now at Nebraska. If there's a coach that it's probably good to have on your good side, Matt Rhule is near the top of the list.
Absolutely. And that's what we talked about with the other benefits that come with maybe being that backup or that safety net at quarterback at Nebraska. The allure was never, hey, you're probably going to get a bunch of playing time. The allure was you'll probably get a little NIL. The facilities are great. The fans are passionate. And absolutely, I mean, Matt Rhule has had a track record, as you said, of helping elevate the careers of other people and coaches in the profession. And what better place to soak up that knowledge for a year or two, to potentially have then an in, maybe at Nebraska, maybe somewhere else, once your playing career is done, to figure out that next step. You see it from every level. He promotes graduate assistants all the way up to guys like Tony White, who is a future head coach, and Matt Rhule openly stumped for him this offseason when it was also clear Nebraska really wanted him back. So I think all those side benefits that come with this situation absolutely help. And again, it's one of those matches where it was such a small number of people that could fit this situation that Nebraska needs. And, here they are. And again, I think it's a result of just putting in the work, and now they get the benefits of it.
Evan Bland with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Evan Bland, World Herald, at Evan Bland, OWH on Twitter. So if there's another edition, Evan, do you expect that to be in the secondary? Rhule today talked about the talent level, and he loves that secondary. He got 30 guys, right? That being said, some guys may not be quite ready yet. And if you're going to add another body, is it somebody that can come in and play corner?
Potentially. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those positions that's as much reactionary and skill-based as it is needing to know the schemes and the defense. So from that perspective, it does make a degree of sense. We are running out of time in terms of being able to add players. I mean, camp season is starting to wrap up. And like you said, there are a number of players on the roster that I think you could turn to. And maybe this is a situation where somebody gets thrown into the situation a little bit earlier than maybe they were comfortable with in an ideal scenario. I mean, we saw today, I thought it was interesting that Matt Rhule and Nebraska have switched Jaden Doss over to the defensive side. I mean, that was a player that they liked as a receiver, and they're just not afraid in the moment to say, hey, he has a lot of qualities, maybe more qualities as a defender in the secondary than he does on the other side. And they usually make these moves not just with team need in mind, but also looking ahead to what this player projects to be maybe as a professional. So, it seems unlikely to me that as big as that room is, they can't find somebody or somebodies to rotate and to fill that role at corner. But that being said, they turn over every rock and look under every bush, and it seems like they do seem to find these guys that project So you never say never, but I do think if they had to move into this season with the guys that they have, I think they'd find some people to step up, and I think they'd perform pretty well.
Evan, I'm glad we're talking about Jalyn Doss here for a second, because one of the things that my mind first went to today whenever I saw that from Rhule was, for years and years, the standard in football was if you saw a wide receiver get moved to the defensive back room, it's because they couldn't catch. That was always the thing that football coaches said, but this is a little bit different.
Coaches told you.
I was an offensive lineman. They never told me that.
Son, just go hurt the guy trying to get the quarterback.
But that's always kind of the joke in football, is that guy went from wide receiver to defensive back, must have bad hands. But that's not the story at all with Jalyn Doss. It's the same story we've heard with this coaching staff. They're looking at projectable traits and where can a guy go be great, where can a guy go be a professional, go play in the NFL, and that's what they're seeing with Jalyn Doss.
Right. I think that's a situation where Matt Rhule's reputation and Nebraska's now reputation as a program that's not afraid to move guys around, that's where this comes in, because I think you're right. If this were under previous coaching staffs, I think you'd look at it and you say, whoa, that was a failure at receiver, and boy, it looks like this is going to be a last-ditch effort to maybe get something out of him. I don't think that's the case now with Matt Rhule at all, for all the reasons that we just laid out. I think they are so confident in their ability to assess, evaluate, project what guys can be, that they're not afraid to do it. And it doesn't really matter the optics of it, what it looks like on the outside. And I think it also emboldens the players to go ahead and make those moves, right? I mean, Jalyn Doss isn't blind. He's been able to look around and see some successful position moves even in the last year at Nebraska. So I think he's willing to give it a try. That Nebraska thinks they're going to coach him up. And that's just another guy to sort of, put a little bookmark on and say, hey, let's see how he looks in a year or two. And if it pans out, man, I mean, that's just another piece of evidence to continue doing that moving forward. So fascinating to see. Again, it's just, to me, it really what resonates to me is how confident they are in what they're doing, that they have no problem doing that for a guy who they've touted as a receiver for the last year.
Evan, let's fast forward to this weekend and one more weekend of visitors. And as you look at Nebraska for 2025, they're still probably looking at a defensive lineman. They're still looking for a couple of offensive linemen. Tell me what you think and some of the names you're circling for this weekend.
Well, I'll be real honest with you guys. I've been so locked in on the College World Series that I have not given a great look at the visitor list for this weekend. And in a week, I'm going to be able to lock back in on a lot of that. But I do know that this continues to be a month where they're going to look to make a lot of hay. And they've planted the seeds in recent months with unofficials, with visits out to where these players are from. And now this is a chance for Nebraska to put its best foot forward. And I think we've had a better sense of what that looks like here this summer, having a chance to see what the strength room looks like now, or having the chance to see what the nutrition demonstration is with Kristen Coggan and how they tailor everything to these individual needs. Like you hear it from recruits every week that come out. Like the facilities are as good as they've seen, the attention to detail is as good as they've seen. And so this is always one of those weekends where just recruiting strategy that you want to get some commitments out of this thing. The further you get away then from this weekend, moving after this weekend, the greater the chance that these guys visit elsewhere or maybe come down from their high of their visit. So as we saw last year, like this is a major month for commitments and getting guys on board for the class. And you can bet Nebraska is going to be ready to impress and hopefully, close the deal on some of these players to get that 25 class going strong.
It's Evan Bland with us here from the Omaha World Herald, Hail Varsity Radio. And Schmidt, do you have any more thoughts here on football? I was going to switch gears to baseball.
Quick take, Evan, on you have Lofton, a big in-state, of course, from Millard South that'll be here this weekend. Will Hawthorne from Iowa, a linebacker, and then, of course, Wright, the USC portal kid. Those are three of the names.
Yeah, I mean, Lofton's obviously a big one. I mean, he's become a bona fide national recruit. He's been on their radar for a long time. And you would think, like, these are those weekends. Like, a lot of these guys and I believe Lofton's one of them, since I've spoken with him, who want to get those decisions made before they really have to start focusing on their senior season. And so with high school camps starting back up here in a few weeks, there is motivation, I think, for them to lock it down and to, maybe have some more of their free time back from coaches who are recruiting them. But then also, like, this is just sort of the new rhythm in college football too, where I think players feel maybe not the pressure as much, but the urgency to get their spot in a class, because the further you go into August, September, and beyond, the less certainty there is that you'll have a space available. So I think this does come down to, just a handful of schools for Lofton. I know he's been doing his due diligence for many months now. But he'd be the guy to me where you look at and say, can Nebraska keep its run of in-state success going? They've been pretty good at that under Matt Rhule. Almost not perfect, but hitting at a pretty high percentage there. So he'd be the first guy I would look at to see, can Nebraska close the deal.
All right, Evan, let's switch gears here, talk some baseball. And before we get to your thoughts on Texas A&M and Tennessee in the championship series up in Omaha, we haven't gotten a chance to get your thoughts. Former Creighton catcher Hogan Haligzo transferring to Nebraska, so he's making the journey about 45 miles south down to the university in Haymarket Park. Your reaction to that addition for Will Bolt and the Huskers?
Yeah, it was very positive. It's kind of funny. Haligzo had a lot of success against Nebraska head-to-head, so this was a situation where coaches didn't need to do a ton of scouting. They didn't need to do a ton of background checks on this guy. Like, they can just look at the last 3 years and see this guy's hit a couple home runs and had big moments against Nebraska the last few years. So I think there's that part of it. And then there's just the part where, in all likelihood, you're resetting your catcher position, at least at your top two, with you're presuming Josh Caron's going to get drafted. Ben Columbus is out of eligibility. And so you're bringing in a couple junior college players, a freshman, and now you have a senior in Haligzo who's caught more than 100 Division I games in his career. And again, his sort of a reputation for being a clutch hitter as well. So really nice add for Nebraska. I think their portal stretch here, when you add in Cale Frost from South Dakota State, has been really strong, and they've addressed the catcher position a little bit while also doing what you have to do in college baseball right now, which is get old and stay old.
All right, Evan, to the championship series we go. Tennessee and A&M. A&M has been riding some incredible pitching all week long in Omaha. Tennessee's been very balanced, a great bullpen. Who do you think has the advantage in a championship series? Who do you think goes home with the hardware?
I mean, it's hard to bet against Tennessee right now, as hot as they are. I mean, A&M's been really good, too. They've been doing it without a couple of their better players, and Braden Montgomery, who's out with an injury, and Shane Sadao, who's one of their better relievers. Those two were both hurt in the super regional round. So they've been really good. But, I mean, Tennessee, they're on a mission, in their first finals appearance in like 70 years. There's just no real weakness. I mean, they have power, they have elite pitching, they have depth, they have kind of that fiery personality, and they've been answering questions for a few weeks now about that curse of the number one overall seed at the College World Series, and I think their personality is such that they're just like, man, we don't care. Like, we've been on the other side of it where we've been the number one that lost in supers, and so I think they have the temperament as well. It's really hard to bet against the Vols right now, and either way, it's going to just expand the SEC dominance that's been at this event now. It's going to be 6 different SEC champions in the last 7 College World Series. So it's a testament to the conference, and it's just a reminder that a lot of these these schools that used to be known as football schools are certainly baseball powers now too.
Evan, we'll check in with you next week, bud. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, guys.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. We welcome in Hall of Fame coach, Colorado and Northwestern, Gary Barnett, back with us. Coach, how we doing? Thanks for the time.
Well, it's officially summer starts tomorrow, I think, or tonight. So just sort of gearing up for a short summer. But it means that football is close, so everybody gets excited about that.
I love seeing the kickoff countdown daily. I think we're at 73. Super excited about covering another season. That said, I was whining to you off air, but a blink and summer's going to be gone. How did you approach it all these years coaching? You couldn't do anything about the old Father Time. That being said, did you hurry up and get to camp, or, man, it's going to be too quick, I'm not going to have much downtime? How did you approach it?
Well, you pretty much have a schedule that you set for yourself and your coaches, and but that's because you had restricted recruiting times. We weren't recruiting all summer. We weren't, everybody had, June was for camps, July was for vacations, May was for recruiting, and then you come back. Everybody comes back about a week to 10 days before practice starts, and you put in your practice schedule. You go over. Everybody meets. They start looking at cut-ups. You start getting ready for each practice, and kids are on the schedule. They know when they have to show up, and so it was sort of pretty regimented for the most part, or at least it felt that way for a number of years, and then. Once they started allowing visits in the summer and recruiting became all year round, guys, they don't get a month off, and they don't, and neither do players. So it's a completely different deal. But so it used to be you just, June 1 rolled around, you started your camps. July 1, you got to go on vacation. August 1, you were practicing. September 1, you were playing, and it would just sort of flowed, but I can't imagine what the flow looks like now.
Any years of burnout, or, man, I need more time to just read, fish, run, bike, whatever you did with your downtime? I needed more vacation time, or were you wired that way at all?
No, you become wired to the regiment, and you knew that the closer it got, the more exciting and it would be. You knew if you went on vacation, you'd be thinking about something else anyway. So that's why we always try to do ours early in July, and then you start getting ready, and there's all sorts of problems and headaches and things that come up that you have to fix and adjust to, and you don't expect. I mean, that's part of being in that chair, and if you got to embellish all the little things that are going to come to you daily. If you don't, it'll eat you alive. So you knew they were going to happen. You didn't know what they were going to be this year, but you just got ready for it. And you had your whole system working, and you have I don't know how many, with all your players and coaches and trainers and strength coaches and things like that. You're well over 150 people. So you've got to, make sure that the people who are in charge of those different areas are in step with you and on schedule, and you're moving a lot of people and doing a lot of things. So the routine really helps.
Gary Barnett with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, let's go back to the walk-on topic. And again, in reference to Lane Kiffin and his story, I think it was in The Athletic, but the future of walk-ons, huge for Nebraska historically. But talk here and now, Coach Barnett, about just what is needed for today's college football coach.
Chris, everybody looks at the NFL model and they say, why in the world does college need 85 scholarships and plus another 20, 30, 40, 50 walk-ons? Why in the world do they need that? And with the NFL, you're dealing, most of your people on that team are 24 or older. Mm-hmm. And the players you're coaching in college are 18 to 22. And so you have to develop them as players. And the college game is different. And so you're going to have on your roster every year 20 to 70 guys who aren't ready to play college football yet. And it takes time to get them ready, and you have to have them there to get them ready. So you have to have those numbers. Nebraska, the way Nebraska practices, and while other people practice differently, it doesn't make any difference. The way Nebraska practices demands a lot of players. They run 2 different scout teams on offense, 2 different scout teams on defense. Well, that's 88 players right there, and that's without any kickers, any holders, any second-string guys, third-string guys. So it's the way you coach it. And so what coaches are going to have to do is they're going to have to maybe not be able to practice the way we've all practiced for years. Is that good? I don't know. And people on the outside will look at that and go, so what? But you learn over years of experience how long it takes to develop a player. And you need them around for a certain period of time in order for that to happen, and they need to practice a certain way to get to that level. But that never gets understood, and it's something that you can't really put a value on. And so if you can't put a value on it, people don't understand it.
Well, so, you want a good line of scrimmage. You want a good tackling team. You want solid offensive and defensive line play. You can't just snap your fingers, Coach, and expect an 18-year-old to handle a 23-year-old. I mean, what you're saying is it's not microwavable, is it, to have your lines of scrimmage at a super high level if you're not going to have opportunity and development time?
Well, there's just a huge difference between 18-year-olds and 24-year-olds. And 18-year-olds say that, a quarter of your roster is 18, but another quarter is 19, another quarter is 20, another quarter is 21. Well, at what point are you ready? Well, at 21, you should be pretty ready. You've had 3 years of college football. You should be ready to play. But that's only a quarter of your roster is at that age and that development level. In the NFL, they're all, everybody you've got is 24 or older. So you don't have those things. You don't have people going through a lot of issues that you go through when you're 18 to 21 years old. So it's just a different time of development in young men and with the game as well. So it's a hard thing to understand. But the other thing, Chris, is so many of the players who end up giving back programs have been walk-on. They give back much better than the guys who become NFL players. And so it's amazing. If you go through and see some of your top people in business, a lot of them have been walk-ons. And the ones who donate back to universities, a lot more walk-ons than the guys who've been in the NFL. So that's a hard thing to put a value on and for the general public to understand.
Gary Barnett with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, how much sleep did you lose, or what was the stress level like for you when it came to in-state recruiting? I know it was prioritized. That being said, Colorado had a lot of folks entering the state border to recruit, and wondering just importance level you put on it.
Well, we said we're going to recruit 3 areas. We're going to recruit Colorado, California, and Texas. And if we have people who are interested from other areas, then we'll pursue it. But we're not going to spend our money, our capital, in any other areas than those 3 areas. And with number 1 being Colorado. And that was because I was a Colorado high school coach. And 11 years, and really another 2 years with the 2 years at Fort Lewis. So I was coaching at Colorado for 13 years. So, it irked me to see that our in-state schools not recruit the state of Colorado. But what happens is a lot of your assistant coaches that come in are from other areas. Very few of them are from the state that they're coaching in. And so they all have backgrounds and connections and interest in all the other places. And they come in thinking the best players are in the state they came from. So you're in a staff room with 10 guys who go out and recruit. Guess what? Not one of them coached in the state of Colorado. This is an example, except me. And so I had to educate him about Colorado, and that was my system and the way I did things. But, Matt Rhule never set foot in the state of Nebraska until he took the head job. So, but he's a quick study, and he knows that, how important it's been to the program. And so he's going to approach it that way. But others, especially if you come into a program that's been losing, they look at it and they go, well, it's because you got too many in-state players. So there's just, everybody brings a different approach and a different background, and you got to navigate that and organize that and educate those guys. But it's the head coach's priority to decide where they're going to recruit and how much emphasis they're going to put it. So we put it in the state. And I heard for years that nobody recruits the state. Well, we recruited the state a lot. We signed a lot of kids from the state. But that was because it was my interest.
Nebraska has prioritized the state of Nebraska. Nebraska's had a resurgence of in-state talent that national programs are looking at. So perception-wise, it looks bad if you lose out on in-state talent, too. They're probably a chance to be really pretty good players. Rhule and his assistants have scoured the state. Was it tough for some of your coaches to get acquainted with folks that they didn't know? How did they develop those relationships with the in-state programs?
Well, coaches they recruit, so they've got to know how to do that. It's never a problem for a new coach to go into an area and get to know guys. It just depends on his work habit and what his marching orders were. In my case, I assigned every one of our coaches to an in-state area. They didn't like that. They didn't want to have to go out to Durango and shake hands with everybody in Cortez and Durango and all the little towns around there. They did it. The reason for me having it done that way is I wanted those coaches in those areas to have somebody on our staff they could call and say, hey, can we come up and watch practice? Hey, we've got this kid. What about this or that? And so I wanted everybody to feel comfortable about contacting somebody on our staff. And if there's players in there in that area, great. Hopefully they're going to tell us about the player before they tell everybody else if we do it right. So that was our approach. It helped me. It helped a lot, I think.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Gary Barnett with us here, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Put your committee member/chair hat on. And when it comes to winning a conference title, how much value do you think will be placed on winning the conference? Do you anticipate that your SEC and Big Ten regular season champs have a better shot at those top 2 seeds, those 2 bye rounds, those 2 passes when we talk here this 12-team playoff?
I think so, and I think they should. The good thing now is you can have a really good team not win the conference championship by a point, and you're probably going to get in. To me, that's the trade-off here, is it's not so much about winning conference championship getting you in, it's the fact that you could have a heck of a team get to the conference championship, have a great game, and have it not make any difference. We can go back to the old Nebraska-Colorado 2001 issue where we have a big game against Nebraska, and then we go win the Big 12, and then we don't get to the national championship game because there's only 2 teams being played in the national championship. Had there been a 4-team championship, we might have gotten in that year. But if there's a 12-team championship, there's no question both those teams are getting in. Fans will like it better. No question about it.
There's only 3 teams with FPI coach that are projected to have a shot at going unbeaten. Georgia is one of them. You have Notre Dame, the other team that's right there, and Oregon is the third. I look at some of those schedules. I look at Michigan's schedule. I look at Oklahoma's schedule. I even look at Alabama's schedule, and they're just brutal. I mean, comparatively speaking to what they were. Do you anticipate teams with this non-conference dialing back non-conference and just, all right, let's just play 9 or 10 league games because there's a perception of our conference being super strong, so just it's better to lose to one another than somebody outside the league?
Yeah, I think that's a real possibility, more so than it has been. Texas has got a brutal schedule, too.
Yeah.
They really do. And then you look at Missouri. Missouri's got the easiest schedule they've had in years and years, and they're playing pretty well. They could be a team that slips in because of the strength of schedule isn't very good, and but they may end up being undefeated going into a championship game. But I do think that in the long run, people are going to dial back on those non-conference games unless they're made. I don't believe this conference alignment is done yet, realignment, and I think we're not looking at it next year or the year after that, but we are looking at another realignment, especially when you start to feel the impact of paying players, budgets being cut, everybody having to pay for this $2.8 billion NCAA settlement. I think you're going to see another realignment coming soon because of the financial difficulties that people are going to have.
What's your timeline? 5 years you have the ACC?
Yeah, I think
Big
5
12?
years is good. I think in the next 4 years, everybody will figure out how hard it is to manipulate and navigate this environment, and then where they're going to find money and how hard it is to find money. So I think private equity will probably get involved on the conference level, but not on the individual level. So, I think all that stuff's going to feed into one big computer, and it's going to spit out a realignment.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, we'll say goodbye to this. Have you ever had a Bryson reenactment out of the sand?
Oh, every once in a while you luck into one of those, but it's not consistent, and I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't ask somebody to put me in that position and see what I can do, but I'm a good sand player, so I'd rather be in the sand than on the grass in most cases.
Man, I wish I was good in the sand. I wish I was good in the grass. I got to work on both. Coach, we'll say goodbye and talk to you next time. Always appreciate you.
Great being with you, Chris. Thanks.
Good to hear from Coach Barnett, and he said don't bet on it. We switched gears to some gambling talk, burksbeat.com. Daddy Burke with us, Pride of Chicago, and Burke's Best Bets, our usual Thursday segment at Daddy Burke 5 on Twitter. Burke's Beat at the podcast, and read his blog. Pride of Chicago, how we doing?
Doing good, guys. We're getting rid of the cicadas around here, so I'm able to hear when I step outside, and we got our first softball game for our 16-inch league tonight. So big things coming ahead here in the Chicagoland area.
You do the classic Chicago game. Schmidt, have you heard of 16-inch softball in the Chicago area? It's a staple around there.
No. What is it?
I watched like a 15-minute long documentary on this. It's essentially softball with a big ball, a big bouncy ball kind of.
Okay.
Well, so you have your traditional 12-inch where you wear mitts, and 16-inch, obviously the bigger ball, and you just go with your bare hand, still underhand pitching and everything. We've been doing it since our senior year of high school, and we've won several championships, but that was in the suburban league, so we moved to the city league the past few years. A little bit tougher, more competition, but game one starts tonight, so we're hoping for a good year, guys.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, the ball is somewhat squishier, is that right? Yes?
Yeah, it's not really like in a plastic kind of hard like the 12-inch. So it's got a little bit more give to it. When you start out in the game, it's very hard, especially if it's a cooler, crisp night. But once it gets beat up a little bit, more so by like the second or third inning, and it takes a couple hits, then it kind of squishes down more so.
Do you lay down any wagers on the 16-inch softball fields?
Is there any Pete Rose rule?
We used to do it as not actually bet, but we would like jokingly make like a story out of it before like on Snapchat or Instagram and set like a fictional line. And we would usually cover because, again, we were playing more so against like 40, 50-year-old guys in the suburban league where we would kind of take advantage. They'd get pissed because we'd just be goofing off and would still dominate. But now we, again, have to take it a little bit more seriously. Even though we will be hitting the bar before the game, we still have to, gear up once first pitch gets underway.
I just love that you're in the 16-inch league. It's one of the only places in the world where they play 16-inch softballs in Chicago. It's a staple around there. I'll send you the little mini YouTube documentary I watched on it, Schmitty.
That's good.
I've been down way too many YouTube rabbit
holes. You don't know about it, Schmitty. I thought you would be in tune with that. I could see you being a big 16-inch softball guy. Even though you didn't grow up here, I could see you being a big fan of it.
No, grew up on the softball fields in North Lincoln and loved it as a kid for sure. And Loved the post games in the Havelock. Absolutely. Let's go to the ice. Friday, Panthers, Oilers staying alive. Edmonton minus 120. Daddy, get the crystal ball out, brother.
Man, R.I.P. to Sergei Bobrovsky Conn Smythe tickets, right? I mean, he was fantastic up until, games 4 and 5, and now all the tide is turning toward Connor McDavid, and people are arguing even if the Oilers lose, McDavid is going to win Conn Smythe. Let's be honest. If they lose in Game 6, it's not going to come to fruition. I guess it's, you're kind of just staying away right now because the value's lost a little bit. I would see the attraction with Florida with the plus money price because you got to think everybody's going to gang up on betting Edmonton with the momentum being at home. But really the bet that I'm probably going to target is the under. The pressure obviously amounting high for Florida, not wanting this to go to a seventh game after blowing a 3-0 lead potentially. And then with Edmonton, the pressure's still on. Your backs are against the wall because holy crap, you made it this far. And obviously every game's an elimination game for him. So Stuart Skinner's played well over the past couple of games. I still have faith in Bobrovsky and think Florida can be a little bit more competent on the defensive end. I would look at the under 5.5 or even entertain first period under 1.5 goals.
Danny, we've spent way too much time talking 16-inch
give
softball.
Us a few minutes on the other side.
Yeah. Can we talk some baseball?
Yep, give me some baseball.
Anything for you guys.
All right, Daddy Burke with us, burksbeat.com, and the podcast. We'll get some MLB thoughts, maybe some CWS suggestions. And Stream, Justin, and Redwine want us to know why we didn't ask about Ethan Nation. Also about Holgerson. Inquiring minds. More with Danny on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Some overtime with Daddy Burke, burksbeat.com. Daddy, you had the over with the run line with Baltimore, New York, correct?
I was a idiot and took the Yankees today, who last I checked were getting absolutely smacked.
16-5, bottom of 8.
Jeez. Yeah, well, here was the thing. I had Luis Gil, starting pitcher for the Yankees, main source of the handicap. He went 1.1 innings, allowed 7 earned runs. So that's what we call a bad handicap right there. Thinking the Yankees could have the edge. Judge back in the mix, rubber match on the line. The Orioles spanked them earlier this year. And I thought Irvin had some underlying metrics that were going to result as being bad. And he did end up giving 5 earned runs up. It's just the Yankees and Luis Gil. I guess I said Gil. That's how you pronounce it. But they were that much worse. So no bueno on my end.
So are we doubling down here? Giants, Cards, Brewers, Padres, San Diego minus 115, San Fran minus 120.
Yeah, I got a prop here for the San Francisco and St. Louis game. So this one taking place at Rickwood Field, Birmingham, Alabama. And obviously it's, a great honor for the Negro Leagues, but especially because of the late Willie Mays, who just passed away too. So certainly he'll be recognized at the event tonight. So it's a unique landscape, right? And it's always a little bit difficult to handicap those settings. But looking at Keaton Wynn specifically here, he has been atrocious on the road this season. His ERA is 9.12. Weighted on base average is 3.92. When he's pitching at home, he's got a 4.50 ERA, which isn't that much better, but not as bad as when he's away from home. And then a 3.02 WOBA at home. Overall, his ERA is over 6.5. Expected ERA is at 5.30. And when he's bringing runners on base, you typically want what's called a high left on base percentage, like 78% or above. He's at 56%. So the runners he's putting on base, he's not leaving them stranded. They're scoring at a pretty high rate. His hard hit percentage is at 50%. You want those in the mid to low 30s. And the Cardinals are a top 10 offense in weighted runs created plus against righties and ISO. And those numbers have increased over the past month. So I don't really want to trust the Cardinals specifically, but what I want to do is fade Keaton Wynn on the other side and bet him to allow over 2.5 earned runs. I got it at the price of plus 110. So that's the lone play I've got remaining tonight.
Danny, last thought here as we talk some baseball. Is it time to just bet on the Padres anytime Matt Waldron's on the mound? In his last 5 starts, he's gone at least 6 innings, has allowed a total of 5 earned runs in those 5 starts. Is it just time to say, you know what, trust Matt Waldron?
I mean, the dude is absolutely filthy. You got Patrick Mahomes tweeting about him now, and I've wagered on him a couple times, and he's come through. It's It's a little concerning, though, now because he's been the hot topic of conversation. So it's like, when is he finally going to have an implosion? But it seems like it may not happen for a bit because the dude, like I said, is just straight filth, and it's incredible to watch him. So it's hard not, to take him in a positive manner with his props or backing the Padres when he's pitching. That's for sure.
Daddy, go win one for the Hail Varsity crew, por favor, tonight.
For the Gipper.
You got it, guys.
Daddy Burke with us, burksbeat.com, Daddy Burke 5 on Twitter. Get his podcast. Pride of Chicago will check in next week. Thank you much.
You got it, fellas. Take care.
There he is. We're going to address the Ethan Nation question. And, yeah, the math that I guess I would do on this is you've got 29 other folks in the secondary room. And I think there's a certain level you need to perform at on and off the field. And that's just my no insight, just my read on it.
And I think,
and I don't know that you'd get that answer.
That's where I was
from
going to say.
Matt Rhule.
Why don't you ask Matt Rhule at the press conference? I think there's enough floating out there that you don't need to ask a guy a question that he's probably not going to answer anyway.
Yeah. So there's that. Thanks for checking in. We'll be back tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity.